Hello everybody, you're joining me as I continue my look at the Batman the Animated Series from McFarlane Toys. This is Wave 3, and today I'm going to be picking up with Batgirl. And Batgirl is probably one of the most sought after figures in this re-release from McFarlane Toys, because Batgirl was one of the latter produced figures from DC Collectibles and was one of the trickier ones to pick up. Now, I actually did manage to snag one way back when, and I actually really quite liked the figure, so we'll see how this version compares. And if we start off by taking a look at the packaging, I think it's already onto a winner, because as I've said, I really like this packaging from McFarlane Toys. I think this is far superior from the DC Collectibles version, and it's actually better than the DC Multiverse line, in all truth. I like that it's much more colourful. I love that we have the Batman the Animated Series logo there, and it is slightly oversized, and I think that's particularly true when we look at Batgirl there. She looks really tiny in this giant packaging, so it's a little bit unnecessary, but nevertheless, it's still very attractive and it makes a great display. As we already know, the side panels are really nice as well, because we have the individual characters here. They stack up on the shelf next to each other, and they're very colourful, and it makes for a really attractive collection. And then finally, the reverse of the packaging is pretty much identical to what we've seen on all of the other releases so far in this wave. Of course, a giant image there of the Builder figure, Maxi Zeus. Otherwise, nothing particularly distinctive or special about this. Moving on to the figure, the first thing to note is that she is pretty dainty, but I have to say, I really love the use of colour on this figure. I think the powder blue and the various shades of silver or grey that we have here work really, really well, and I think it is a really nice looking figure all in all. This head sculpt, of course, this is simply recycled from what we've seen before, but I think they've done a really nice job with this, and it bears mentioning again that they've caught the likeness from the animated series very, very well. Now, as we have talked about before previously, of course, this line has added cell shading. This is different to what we see in the original DC Collectibles run. Now, people will have mixed feelings about this, and I certainly do sometimes, because I think sometimes it works very well and sometimes it works against the figure. It didn't work so well for Two-Face, but I think here is an example where it does work quite well, especially when you have a character that is mostly in greys. Having that extra tone there, the darker silver or the darker grey, works really well to make this figure a bit more visually interesting and adds a little bit more colour to it. So all in all, I think the paints are very well applied. It's a shame that the bat symbol isn't actually sculpted onto a chest, it's just painted in there, whereas we've seen with Batman, of course, it actually is sculpted, which works a lot better. That's something they could have improved upon, but other than that, I think they've done a good job. We can see that the cell shading, of course, goes over her arms, on her torso a little bit, and then of course even on the back there we can see it running through her hair and the back of the cowl, and even on the cape, and we can see this dotted throughout the figure on the side profile as well, going across the body and then of course down the leg. So for me, I actually think this works really well. I think it's kind of subtle, but it actually enhances the figure, and I think it does make a big difference. All in all, I actually really do like this, and I think the presentation of the figure is really, really well done. One thing I do have to criticise is the very small feet. Now, I know, yes, this is accurate to what we see in the animated series, and it works great in a cartoon. It doesn't work well in action figures, and as we saw with Two-Face, she really struggles to stand up by herself. She has a tendency to fall over because she only has a very small surface area to balance all of that weight of the rest of the figure. Now, she's pretty dainty and pretty lightweight overall, so she fares a little bit better than Two-Face, who tends to be a little bit more top heavy in all truth, but nevertheless, this is a tiny surface area. This is going to cause all sorts of problems unless you have a stand to peg her into. Unsurprisingly, the articulation is pretty limited. She can swivel her head from side to side. It is a ball joint, but you're not going to get an awful lot out of that, and if you think she's going to be able to nod her head up and down with the back of her hair, forget about it. Now, she does have ball joints in her shoulders, so she can lift her arms up and out, which is good. She's got the standard pin swivel at the elbow there, so that lower forearm will spin all the way around. When it comes to hinging though, not even 45 degrees, so that's pretty weak. She does have an extra swivel at the top of the gauntlet, which is nice, and she's got a pin swivel at the wrist, so the handle will rotate all the way around and it will hinge forwards and backwards. No waist articulation, but there is a hip joint there allowing the top of the leg to hinge out to the side. It will kick forwards, kick backwards. There is a single joint at the knee, which is disappointing, so that lower leg will only go to about 90 degrees, and then she does have an extra swivel at the top of the boot cut, and then a straight hinge at the ankle. Now, the accessories are frankly laughable because she comes with an additional 4 pairs of hands. That's 8 hands, all sorts of hands, gripping hands, open palm hands, but no accessories to grapple hold of, not even a batarang. So it feels kind of redundant and a bit pointless. And, well, that's basically all there is to say. So, all in all, I'm going to give this figure 3 stars, which in some ways might seem a bit generous, but let me talk you through my reasoning here. I actually really like the presentation of this figure. I think it's off to a really good start. It looks great in its packaging, and it looks great outside of the packaging. I really like the cell shading here, and I like the added benefit of the colour that it introduces to this figure. It gives it a lot more depth and texture, and I think it actually is, as a figure, superior to the original release in that sense. I do think this is a lot more colourful and a lot more fun, and I think it works an absolute treat. So I think visually this figure works really, really well, and is a very nice addition to the line, and that's why it gets the 3 stars. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a cheeky one because the articulation ain't great, her balance is not good, and those accessories are just pointless. Why are we giving so many hands when she has nothing to grip? This just feels like a massive oversight and just a little bit cheeky all in all. So she definitely loses a couple of stars for that. But in terms of looks, I think this works perfectly well and is, you know, a worthwhile addition. And I think if you missed out on this figure first time around and you've got this whole in your collection, she is definitely a really worthwhile pursuit to get hold of, because it's going to round out your collection, and I think this version actually is a lot nicer than the original. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching this long. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like, it really helps the channel out, and if you're interested in more videos like this, please subscribe. I'll have plenty more content soon.